I moved to Pine Hollow a few months ago. I wanted a quiet life to spark my creativity as a freelance graphic designer. The air was crisp, and the winter made everything feel fresh. I thought I'd finally found what I was looking for. One night, while I sipped tea, I heard a soft thumping on the wall. At first I thought it was just an old pipe, but it kept going. I felt a knot in my stomach. My heart raced. Maybe it was nothing, but it didn't feel right. Days passed, and I noticed how odd my neighbor's cabin was. I hadn't seen anyone in weeks. The lights flickered at strange hours. Shadows moved behind the curtains, but I brushed it off. Still, that thumping remained an echo in my mind. It felt strange, but I couldn't explain why. Then one evening I heard muffled voices coming from next door. I sat still, holding my breath. Who was in there? Were they okay? I wanted to knock on the door, but fear gripped me. What if nobody answered? That night, I caught a glimpse of a child's face peeking out from a window. I blinked and it was gone. I hadn't seen any kids before. I felt uneasy. Why hadn't I seen anyone else? I decided to clear my head outside. The snow piled on the porch next door was untouched. My heart pounded harder. I wanted to turn around, but something held me in place. The thumping started again, louder this time. I rushed back to my cabin. My mind raced with questions. What if it wasn't just my imagination? What if someone needed help? I froze, unable to move. Finally, I gathered my courage and knocked on my neighbor's door. I stood there for what felt like hours. Nothing. I felt a chill. I knocked again, louder. Just as I turned away, I heard a faint voice call my name. My heart sank. Then it came again, softer like a whisper. I rushed back to the door, but it opened to emptiness. I felt the air shift around me. That's when I noticed her. A child stood behind me, grinning. I whipped around, my breath caught in my throat. I thought maybe I was imagining things, but she was real. The little girl looked right at me with wide eyes, her grin stretching too wide. "Hello," she said, her voice sweet yet chilling. "Where's your mom?" I asked, but she just giggled. Each chuckle sent chills down my spine. I stepped back, but the girl moved closer, eyes bright with mischief. "She's busy," she said, her smile never wavering. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but my legs felt heavy. Suddenly, the thumping came again from next door, louder, like something desperate was trying to escape. I looked back at the child. She had vanished. I stumbled back, panic rising in my chest. Then I heard that voice again, this time coming from the cabin next door. "Help me!" it cried. I stood frozen, caught between fear and the urge to help. And in that cold winter night, Pine Hollow felt darker than ever. I paced back and forth in my cabin, heart pounding against my ribs. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. What had just happened? A child appeared out of nowhere, and then she was gone. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. I grabbed my jacket and opened the door, leading out into the icy night. The air was sharp against my skin. I hesitated for a moment, wondering if I should just forget everything and go back inside. But I couldn't shake the voice calling for help from next door. The ground crunched beneath my boots as I made my way to the neighbor's cabin. Snowflakes danced in the air, and the world felt oddly silent, as if it was holding its breath. I approached the door, my hand hovering just above the cold surface. I took a deep breath and knocked, firm and determined. "Hello," I called out, my voice trembling. "Is anyone there?" No response, just more silence. Then I noticed something, light flickering through a crack in the curtains. My heart raced. Someone had to be home. I knocked again, louder this time. "Is anyone in there? Please, I heard you." A muffled sound drifted from within, but it wasn't a response. It was that same thumping, rhythmic and frantic. I pressed my ear against the door, and the noise grew louder. It felt as if something was trying to break free. I tried the doorknob, and it turned. An unexpected wave of anxiety washed over me. Should I even go in? I pushed the door open slowly, wincing as it creaked. The scene inside made my skin prickle. The cabin appeared empty, in disarray. Furniture was overturned, and scattered papers lay strewn across the floor like fallen leaves. But the thumping was even louder now, emanating from the back room. "Hello?" I called out again, stepping inside. The door swung shut behind me, the cold draft suddenly cutting off. I felt trapped. I moved cautiously toward the back, each step heavy with dread. As I entered the room, I squinted into the dim light. It was a bedroom. The bed was unmade, as if someone had slept there in a rush. And then I saw it. A large trunk sat in the corner, shaking slightly, as if something inside wanted out. My breath hitched. I approached the trunk, every instinct screaming at me to run, but I had to know. "Is someone in there?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The thumping intensified, echoing through my veins. Suddenly, the lid of the trunk flew open, and I gasped as a figure bolted out. A woman, disheveled and wide-eyed, stared back at me. "Help me!" she cried, her voice breaking. My heart raced as confusion took hold. Who was she? What had happened? Before I could ask, the lights flickered off completely, shrouding us in darkness. Panic surged once more, and then everything went silent. I reached out into the void, my hands trembling. "Hello?" I called out, but I only heard the sound of my own breath. That's when I felt it. A cold hand gripped my wrist. I froze, the realization crashing over me like ice water. Someone was still in this house. I stood there, frozen, as the cold hand tightened around my wrist. Adrenaline coursed through me, freezing any logical thought. My pulse raced, and I mustered every ounce of courage to speak. "Who are you?" I stammered, but the grip only tightened, drawing me closer into total darkness. "Don't move!" The woman's voice shot through the fog of fear. "It's not safe!" I felt her panic flicker through the darkness, and it rattled me. Had she escaped from whatever was in this cabin, or was she part of it? "Let go!" I yelled, trying to shake off the grip, but it only held on tighter. "Please, I need you to listen to me," she pleaded, voice trembling. "There's someone here." I felt her breath against my shoulder, chilled but urgent. Then I was pulled away from the trunk, my mind racing. I turned to face her, trying to make sense of her wide eyes. "What do you mean? What's happening?" "I don't know how much time we have," she gasped. "I was hiding. It's been hunting me all night. It'll come back." Before I could ask her what she meant, the grip on my wrist loosened and I stumbled backward. My back hit the wall and the woman drew closer, her eyes darting nervously around the room. "We need to get out," she said, urgency in her voice. "How?" "The door." "Not through the door," she interrupted, glancing at where I stood. "We'll go through the window. It's our only chance." I felt the panic rising again. "What if there's something out there too?" She stepped closer, eyes pleading with intensity. "We can't stay here. If you want to know what's going on, we have to escape first." I nodded, not knowing if I trusted her, but feeling I had no choice. The atmosphere around us felt heavy, like a storm was about to break loose. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the front of the cabin, followed by a low growl. A jolt of terror shot through me. "We have to move now!" I turned, scrambling toward the window. I fumbled with the latch, while the sounds grew louder, creeping closer. The night outside felt almost welcoming compared to what loomed behind us. The window finally swung open with a gasp, letting in a sharp, cold gust of air. I climbed through, my heart racing as I caught sight of the snowy ground below. The woman followed after me, and just as I hit the ground, I glanced back into the cabin. That's when I saw it, a shadow creeping across the floor, its shape distorting in the dim light. It was low to the ground, long and menacing, moving closer to the window we had just escaped through. I scrambled back, pulling her with me. "We need to run!" I shouted, glancing briefly at the cabin. The shadow paused at the window as if sensing us before darting back. "We need to find somewhere safe," the woman panted, her eyes wide and desperate. "Let's go," I urged, and we dashed into the woods, snow crunching beneath our feet. But as we ran, I couldn't shake the feeling we were being watched. I realized I had no idea where we were heading, but the darkness behind us fueled my determination. We needed answers, but first we had to survive the night. The trees loomed like sentinels around us, their skeletal branches clawing at the night sky. The moon spilled ghostly light on the snow, illuminating our path but doing little to ease my mind. I was still shaking from what had just happened. "Do you know where we're going?" I asked, glancing over my shoulder. The cabin had vanished behind a curtain of dark trees, but the fear it left lingered. "Not far," she replied, her breath misting in the frigid air. "There's a cove. We can hide there until it's safe." I hoped she was right, though uncertainty gnawed at me. "And what is it that's hunting you?" I asked, needing to understand what we were facing. She shook her head, eyes wide with fear. "I don't know. I only saw shadows and felt it close. It's smarter than I thought." Her words sent a chill down my spine. How could something be smart and hunt at the same time? The thought made my heart race even faster. We stumbled over root systems hidden beneath the snow, slipping and regaining our balance in a frantic dance. Then, without warning, a howl sliced through the night air. It echoed across the trees, deep and resonant. My blood ran cold. The sound was primal, filled with a hunger that sent us darting deeper into the woods. "Keep moving," she urged, grabbing my arm as we continued to run. "We can't let it catch us." The howl faded, but unease grew with every step. Just when I thought we might catch our breath, I caught movement to my right. A dark shape glided between the trees, slick and silent. I froze, heart hammering in my chest. "Did you see that?" I whispered. She nodded, her face pale. "Don't stop!" And we didn't. We pushed ahead until we found ourselves at the edge of a small cove, hidden by a barricade of thick bushes. "Here," she gasped, pulling me behind the thicket. "We'll be safe here for now." We crouched low, panting as the cold stung our ears. The moon shone brightly above, illuminating the crystalline snow. I was grateful for the temporary respite, but knew danger still loomed nearby. "What if it follows us here?" I whispered, feeling the weight of impending doom. "It might. But I have a plan," she said, her eyes locked onto the dark surrounding the cove. "We need to set a trap, something to distract it." I mustered the courage to ask the question that gnawed at my thoughts. "What are we dealing with?" She hesitated, eyes filled with dread. "I think it's a predator, and we're its prey." Before I could respond, another howl echoed, closer this time. Panic surged through me. "What should we do?" "Gather branches," she instructed, urgency threading her voice. "We need to cover our tracks and make noise to draw it away." As I scrambled for the debris scattered around, a sudden rustle came from the bushes behind us. My stomach dropped, heart pounding wildly. I turned to her, eyes wide with alarm. "Did you hear that?" A low growl resonated, and just as I focused on it, a pair of glaring eyes pierced through the darkness of the cove. That's when I realized we weren't alone. The eyes glimmered like sharpened glass in the moonlight, fixed directly on us. Panic surged through my veins, freezing me in place. What was that thing? "Stay quiet," she whispered, her voice trembling as she pressed closer to me. I could feel her body tense beside mine, aware that we were no longer just hiding, we were being hunted. The growl rumbled again, deep and insistent. I needed to know what we were dealing with, but my voice failed me. Clenching my fists, I searched my surroundings for anything we could use. There were dead branches nearby, but I'd have to divert my gaze from those eyes. "Can you see it?" I asked, desperate for her input. She nodded slowly, barely breathing. "It's big. I can't tell what it is, but it's not normal. We need to create a diversion." Her plan hung on the razor edge between survival and hopelessness. As the growl faded, I scanned the area, searching for anything even remotely useful. My gaze landed on a fallen tree trunk, thick and sturdy, lying just a few feet away. If we can push that towards the noise, maybe it will... With a sudden leap, the beast lunged from the shadows, a blur of fur and teeth. The shock made me jump back, adrenaline rushing through me. I caught a glimpse of its fanged maw, dripping with who knew what, before it darted across the moonlit snow. "Run!" she screamed, and I didn't need to be told twice. We bolted deeper into the cove, hearts pounding wildly, but the fear of getting cornered pushed us onward. Branches whipped against our faces, and the bitter cold stung any exposed skin. The sound of our footsteps drowned out the distant howls, but I knew we weren't safe yet. I could still feel the weight of those eyes bearing down on us. "Over here!" she shouted, pointing to an alcove formed by the large rocks lining the edge of the cove. We scrambled inside, wedging ourselves into a crevice. The rocky walls enclosed us like the comforting arms of a guardian. I pressed my back against the stone, trying to steady my breath. "What about the trap?" She shook her head, her eyes wide with fear. "It's too late for that. We need to wait it out. If it's smart, it'll circle back." The growl resounded again, closer this time. My pulse quickened anew. It seemed to taunt us, drawing nearer, and from the corner of my vision I saw movement in the shadows. The low rumbling of the growl transformed into a series of sharp barks, each one striking like arrows through the eerie silence. "Do you hear that?" I hissed. She nodded, trembling as she whispered, "It's calling for something." Before I could ask what she meant, a piercing howl erupted again, shaking us to our core. The call echoed through the trees, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. That's when I felt the air shift. Something else was out there. "Something else is coming," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But before she could respond, a shadow darted past the mouth of our hiding place, and I froze, breath caught in my throat. Then everything went dark. I woke up with a jolt, disoriented. My heart raced as I blinked, trying to adjust to the darkness around me. Something had shifted in the air, a coldness mixed with an unsettling stillness. I could barely see, but it felt as if the alcove had deepened, swallowing any trace of light. "Are you okay?" Her whisper cut through the silence, pulling me back. "I think so. What happened?" I managed to ask, fear creeping back into my voice. "I don't know. Maybe it couldn't find us." She sounded shaky, but there was a hint of relief in her tone. I turned to see her, her outline barely visible against the rock. My mind raced, replaying the moment before darkness claimed me. The shadow had been so close, unnervingly precise. What had come so close to us? "I heard something right before," I started, but the faint sound of movement above us silenced me. It was soft, deliberate. Her breathing hitched as she leaned into me. "What is that? It's back, isn't it?" I wanted to deny it, but instinct told me otherwise. The growls were gone, replaced by the faint rustle of claws against rock. "What if it's waiting?" she whispered. "What if it knows we're here?" I felt a chill deeper than the cold night air. "We can't stay here." My voice was nearly a hiss. We needed to move, but I had no idea where. The weight of the night pressed on me, every sound magnified into a deafening reminder that something hunted us. The scratching ceased suddenly, leaving an eerie emptiness. "Maybe it's gone," I said, but I didn't believe it. Not for a second. That's when a growl sliced through the quiet, raw and primal. I jumped, heart racing again. The sound was low and rumbling, wrapping around us like a chain of ice. "We need to get out, now," I said, urging her with a nod. She nodded back, fear racing in her eyes. We squeezed out of the alcove, scanning the area for any sign of danger. The moon hung high, casting long shadows over the terrain. I could feel it watching again, lurking somewhere close, waiting for us to make a move. "Which way?" she asked, looking around wildly. "Let's head toward the trees. We must find a path back to the campsite," I suggested, even though doubt gnawed at me. A sudden crash echoed from behind us, breaking the tension. I turned to see a figure dart into the trees. Whoever or whatever that was, it wasn't alone. I grabbed her arm, tugging her toward the densest cluster of trees. Suddenly the barks returned, sharper, frantic. It was a warning or perhaps a call. Either way, we had to disappear before it led the creature right to us. Panic surged in my chest. We can't let it find us. As we sprinted into the forest, something sharp grazed my leg. I stumbled and looked down, realizing it was a set of gnarled roots rising from the ground. The darkness swallowed everything, and I felt completely lost now. "Keep moving," she urged, her voice barely above a shout. I could see it now, a flicker of movement through the trees. Then I heard a roar, the kind that sent locking terror sprawling across my heart. That's when I realized there was more than one. "Run!" I screamed, and we took off into the night, the sound of growls and barks closing in behind us. We burst through the trees, branches snapping underfoot as we navigated the dark maze that swallowed us whole. My lungs burned from the cold air, and with every step the growls behind us grew closer. I glanced over my shoulder just in time to catch a glimpse of a dark shape slipping between the trees. It was large, too large for comfort. "Faster!" she urged, her grip tightening around my wrist. I pushed myself harder, adrenaline fueling my movements. The forest was a blur, a swirl of shadow and sound. I didn't know where we were heading, but anywhere was better than here. Suddenly, a blinding flash erupted somewhere ahead. A warm light cut through the darkness, illuminating the trees around us. I staggered to a halt, shielding my eyes from the brightness. "What is that?" I gasped. I don't know," she stammered, her wide eyes reflecting the glow. As the light flickered back to life, I spotted the campsite nestled at the edge of the forest. The fire pit was ablaze, flames dancing fervently, casting long shadows on the ground. "The campsite! We need to get there!" I shouted, relief surging through me. We sprinted toward it, but the growls grew louder, the sounds of pursuit. My heart pounded harder. Were they following us? When we reached the clearing, it was a sight for sore eyes, a haven, a beacon of hope. But as we stumbled into the light, we found it empty. The tent stood solemn, flapping gently in the wind, yet no one was there. "Where is everyone?" she whispered, panic rising in her voice. A cold dread settled in my stomach. "They should be here," I said, looking around, searching for any sign of our friends. The only sound was the crackling of the fire and the relentless howling growing just beyond the tree line. Another flash of movement caught my eye, a shadow darting behind a tent. "What was that?" I pointed, my throat dry. "Maybe it's one of them," she suggested, her voice barely above a whisper. "Or something worse." I stepped forward cautiously, then stopped. Something felt off. The energy of the campsite had shifted, as if the air itself held its breath. Then a low growl echoed from the edge of the clearing, just outside the shimmering safety of the light. The chaos that pursued us had found its way here. "That doesn't sound good," she murmured, backing away. I turned back toward the forest. "We have to find somewhere else to hide, now!" Just as I said it, 3 shapes emerged from the tree line, their eyes glinting in the dim light. They were big, and their movements were eerily calculated. I grabbed her arm. "Behind the tents!" We dashed to the side, the growls intensifying, sounding almost eager. Just then, I noticed something bright on the ground, a small object glimmering in the firelight. I stopped, incredulous. It was Liam's bracelet. "That can't be good," I said, dread creeping in as I bent down to pick it up. "Get back!" she hissed, pulling at my shirt, but I couldn't move. The bracelet was still warm, and the sight of it sent a chill through me. We weren't just running for our lives. We were running from something that had already left its mark on our friends. Then, with a sudden snap of branches, one of the creatures lunged forward, and everything went black as I was pulled back into the night. I surfaced into consciousness, gasping for air. My body ached, as if I'd been thrown against the ground. As the fog of darkness lifted, I found myself in a cramped, cold space. Panic surged in me as I realized I was stuffed beneath one of the tents, the fabric tightly pressing against my body. I heard her voice nearby, softer now, threaded with fear. "Are you okay?" "I think so," I replied, trying to steady my breath. I crawled out from under the tent, instantly regretting it when I caught sight of the chilling scene outside. The campsite was blanketed in shadows, the fire reduced to dying embers, but it wasn't the darkness that sent a tremor down my spine. It was the chilling growls drifting through the air. "They're close," I said, scanning the perimeter. I could see the silhouettes of the creatures just outside the remnants of the firelight, their glowing eyes watching us, hungry. I grabbed her wrist and pulled her behind a nearby tree. "What do we do?" she squeaked, her voice trembling. Thinking fast, I noticed a pile of firewood stacked at the edge of the pit. "We need to make a fire. Now," I whispered. It was our only chance. If we could just get a flame going, maybe we could fend them off, or at least create a distraction. "Let's do it!" she nodded, rushing over to the pile. As we began gathering sticks, my mind raced. I couldn't stop thinking about the bracelet. The thought of Liam's warming presence, now nothing more than a memory, was like a punch to the gut. I glanced back, double-checking the shadows. The creatures waited patiently, their mouths parted, revealing rows of sharp teeth. They seemed to relish in our panic, relishing the hunt. "Quick, grab some pine needles," I instructed. The instinct to survive kicked in. If we could light this fire before they attacked, we might have a fighting chance. We stacked the firewood as quickly and quietly as we could. My fingers shook as I fumbled with the flint and steel, trying to create a spark. "Come on," I urged under my breath, striking the steel again and again, until finally a small flame flickered up. Yes! I hurriedly fed it with twigs, watching it grow. Then a loud snarl echoed through the trees. My heart raced as I dashed to find out where it was coming from. One of the creatures had moved closer, inching forward, emboldened by our desperate actions. "Stay back!" I shouted, brandishing a branch with flames licking at its end like a weapon. The creature stopped, its eyes narrowing. I could see its features more clearly now, a massive wolf-like beast with matted fur and unsettling intelligence glimmering in its gaze. It didn't seem afraid. "Keep feeding the fire!" I yelled to her. I took a step toward the creature, trying to intimidate it. My voice wavered, but I pressed on. "Get out of here!" Suddenly, it lunged forward, and instinct took over. I swung the flaming branch at it, narrowly missing. The creature let out an enraged growl that shook me to the core. "Get the other side!" I ordered, gripping the makeshift weapon tighter. In the chaos, I wondered how we'd ended up here, fighting for our lives. Then fear struck me again, sharper this time. This wasn't just about survival anymore. There was something they wanted from us, something that tied back to the campsite, the missing friends, and Liam's bracelet. Then, just as I readied myself to confront the beast again, an ear-splitting howl erupted from the woods. Something larger, something angrier. "What is that?" she cried, her eyes wide with terror. That's when I saw it. Emerging from the trees was a creature twice the size of the one stalking us. Its form was cloaked in shadows, but the glint of sharp claws was unmistakable, and it was coming straight for us. I stumbled back, feeling the heat of the flames at my back. The enormous beast moved with a grace that seemed unnatural for its size, stalking toward us with deliberate slowness. A cold sweat coated my skin. "Run!" I shouted at her as the ground trembled with each of its heavy steps. But my legs were glued to the spot. Fear rooted me in place. The fire crackled, casting frantic shadows that danced around us. The smaller beast, emboldened by its larger companion, circled closer, its eyes fixed on the flames. I could feel the surge of dread rising in my chest, pushing me to act. "Grab anything you can!" I yelled, lurching into action. We were out of time. I scanned the area, hoping to find something, anything that could help us fight. She tore off a nearby branch and brandished it, her hands shaking. "What do we do?" "Keep the fire between us and them," I instructed, pulling her closer as the massive creature paused, sniffing the air. Then, as if sensing our fear, it lunged. The sound of its claws scrambling in the dirt filled my ears. I swung the flaming branch wildly, missing its snarling maw by mere inches. The creature stopped short, a low growl rumbling deep in its chest. "Now!" I shouted, throwing the branch into the heart of the fire. Flames erupted higher, filling the air with smoke. In that moment of distraction, I took a quick glance back at the forest behind us. I saw other shadows swirling, and I knew we weren't alone. This was no ordinary night in the woods. "Stay back!" I yelled at the beasts closing in, as the fire flickered violently, illuminating their horrifying faces. All at once the massive beast roared, a bone-chilling sound that echoed through the trees. "Are there more?" she asked, her voice shaking, reflecting my own fear. I think there are," I replied, feeling the weight of dread settle over me. We had to escape, but the closest path was directly through the growling beasts. Defeat washed over me like a cold wave. "Let's move!" I grabbed her arm, and we pushed through the underbrush, weaving around the camp. Each rustle behind us made my heart race. The creatures were following. We reached the trailer parked at the edge of the campsite. I hurriedly tried the door, but found it locked. "Damn it! Can we break it?" she asked, glancing over her shoulder. The sounds of snapping branches told me they were right behind us, and we were out of time. "Here!" I pointed to a rock on the ground. "Hold this and get ready to throw." I picked up a stone and hurled it at the door, splintering the wood. "One more!" Just as I lifted my arm to throw again, a loud crash punctuated the night air. The massive creature had slammed into the trees behind us, sending branches flying. "Let's go! Now!" I screamed. We rushed toward the door, but the sound of low growls surrounded us. I could barely think straight with everything closing in. I flung the door open, urging her inside. Just as I stepped through, the shadows converged. The last thing I heard was a shrill cry breaking into the darkness as the door slammed shut. Could we keep them out? The chilling fear that we might not be alone here gripped me as I triggered the deadbolt. But with the danger still lurking outside, I knew the worst was yet to come. I leaned against the door, my breath heavy and labored as I waited for the creatures to break through. My heart thudded like a war drum, each pulse a reminder of how close I'd come to being swallowed by the shadows. I glanced around the cramped interior of the trailer, the faint smell of old wood and dust mixing with the tangible tension in the air. The woman sat on the floor, her wide eyes darting around the room, panic written across her face. "What now?" she asked, voice hoarse with fear. "I don't know," I whispered, straining to hear any sign of our pursuers outside. The growling had quieted, replaced by an ominous stillness that wrapped around us like a suffocating blanket. It felt unnatural, a silence that hinted at something lurking just beyond our sight. I turned to the window, pulling aside the thin curtain to peek outside. The moon cast pale light over the campsite, illuminating the chaos we had fled from. The fire pit was a blackened remnant of what had been just moments prior. Shadows slinked between the trees, phantoms stalking us in the night. "Do you think we're safe in here?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Safe enough for now." I wished I could assure her completely, but uncertainty gnawed at my insides. I replayed everything that had happened, the girl with the wild grin, the frantic mother trapped in the trunk, and the creatures closing in. Had they come for us specifically? More importantly, had they taken our friends? Suddenly, a sharp scratching noise echoed from the door, the sound of claws sliding against wood. My blood ran cold. I moved back instinctively, holding my breath. "Are they here?" she whispered, eyes wide. "I think so," I replied, gripping the edge of a nearby table for support. My heart raced as the scratching turned into a rhythmic pounding. "We need to find a way out." Her eyes flickered to the back of the trailer. "What if there's a way out?" I nodded, the idea catching fire in my mind. "Let's check." Together we crept toward the small kitchen area, careful to muffle our footsteps. The noise intensified behind us, a relentless reminder of the danger pressing in. I opened the drawer and searched for anything that might be useful. Knives, flashlights, anything. My hand brushed against something cold and hard. I pulled out a small hunting knife. "Maybe this will help," I offered, voice firm but uncertain. She nodded, taking it from me, and my heart ached with the realization that holding a mere knife felt so insignificant against the terror outside. Suddenly the door slammed. I turned, stumbling backward, fear etched on my face. The growl had transformed into a cacophony of snarls as the shadows closed in, echoing an unmistakable hunger. "Quick! We have to find a way to the back," I urged, leading the way to a narrow passage that led to a small bathroom. As we slipped inside, the pounding resumed. They were trying to get in. "What do we do?" she asked, panic rising again. I considered the options. "We have to find a window, but we need to be fast." The noise grew unnerving, a chaotic symphony that teased at the brink of breaking through. Just as I pushed aside the curtain, I heard a voice, clear as day amidst the chaos, feminine and soft. "Help me." My heart leaped into my throat. I whipped around. "Did you hear that?" She shook her head, eyes filled with confusion. "What? I didn't hear anything." "It came from—" Before I could finish, the window shattered with a deafening crash. Cold air rushed in, and I took a step back instinctively, but the creature was already there, a massive wolf-like silhouette leaping through the opening, clawing wildly. "Run!" I shouted, grabbing her wrist again as we darted for the back exit. The creature landed heavily, its growl vibrating through the trailer's worn walls. I lunged for the door, just as the noise escalated behind us. We burst through into the night, frigid air biting at my skin. I didn't stop to think, I just ran, pulling her with me into the woods. "Keep moving," I urged, adrenaline pushing us forward, the growls of the creatures behind us echoing like a dark promise. In our flight, I didn't look back. The woods swallowed us, the branches clawing at our clothes as the trees thickened around us. But a nagging feeling pulsed within me, a thought that I couldn't shake. We were running in the dark. But toward what? We burst into a clearing illuminated by the moon, panting and gasping for air. But it was here that I finally dared to stagger to a halt and turn. Would we find refuge or face the darkness head-on? A flicker caught my eye. There, at the opposite edge of the clearing, a figure stood, small and delicate, framed by the moonlight. It was the girl from before. "You came," she called, her grin unnervingly wide. My blood chilled, dread seeping into my bones again. Had the hunt just begun? Before I could react, a howl erupted from the trees, echoing her call, a summons unmistakable. Somewhere in the dark, the hunt was still very much alive.